Hello, everybody. Welcome to SCGCon Charlotte, Modern 20K. My name is Nicole Callahan, also known as Lady of the Crease, and I am joined here today by Jim Davis MTG on pretty much all socials. Hey, what's going on?
What's up? Good morning, y'all. Some SCG coverage today, which is great. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, it does make it a very good morning. Very good morning. Very excited to kind of dive into Modern here. We're taking a look at sort of what the modern metagame is nowadays. See, Modern used to be, just grab your modern deck, whatever deck you actually play, your pet deck, Amulet or Tron or Burn, and you just show up. Things have changed over the years. And I feel like, especially because of the comings of Modern Horizons 1, Modern Horizons 2, there's kind of like best decks in the format. Uh Decks like Murktide Regent, we've seen a lot of Rakdos mid-range, and I know that you've had some recent experience in a different format, however, with Indomitable Creativity.
Yeah, popular here as well.
Yes. Any thoughts about what we might see a lot of today?
I mean, I know creativity's been a little more popular, but honestly, it's been interesting because modern used to be kind of Magic's darling. And now, recently the Pro Tour was Pioneer. We've seen a lot more Pioneer at the RC as well. And then, of course, on the arena side of things, we have standard and limited and so on and so forth. So it's been kind of spreading the wings a little bit here, but looks like we're ready to go right in the game.
Right. And on the left, we have our world champion, Nathan Steuer, on Izzet Murktide, one of the decks already mentioned. And on the right, we have David Tardif on 4-color elementals.
That could be a lot of things too. There could be a lot of it could be like full on Wizardry of Elementals. It could be just like some ephemerate stuff. So we'll see. We'll see what's going on here. But best possible start. Turn one Ragavan on the play. What more could you want?
Yes, and we'll see if David is going to be able to jump in front of that pesky monkey here. We'll see how he's going to start off the game. Takes a good long look at the hand, decides going to crack a flooded strand, and
See, I love this. We have Nathan shuffling still from his turn, and now David's going his turn to shuffle. If you haven't played Modern in a while, it's sort of like a culture shock almost, where you kind of forget, oh yeah, the first two turns are just both players shuffling their decks constantly. It's kind of crazy.
yes, especially when the color demands. I imagine in a 4-color deck, you're going to see a lot of shuffling, and Ragavan gone. So
Exiled.
exiled.
See you later. Peace.
So David able to answer that turn on Ragavan, and we'll see if Nathan has a good follow-up play here. Draws 4 turn and takes a long look at the hand. Spire Bluff Canal, taps 1, plays a Dragon Rage Channeler. Also,
A worthy replacement.
right. One of the best red 1-drops printed in the past few years.
It is funny that it is it is extremely good and the second best red 1-drop in its own set.
We'll see a Consider, and Dragon Rage Channeler is going to trigger here. So putting that trigger on, going to say, okay, I will do that. Just scry to the top and draw that card off of the Consider. Leyline Binding, also going to take care of the Dragon Rage Channeler. So Nathan's played 2 threats. David's had 2 answers.
Yeah, it's funny doing paper coverage now. I thought that was a teamer triome, but apparently it must be the Sultai triome because obviously Leyline Binding is cast for 1. So lands are going to get us all day. We battle with those. So you get to watch Nathan and David battle each other, and then of course Nicole and I battle the alternate arts here
right?
in the booth.
How many different arts of Ragavan will we see today?
Yes, there's some fancy ones given out at the MagicCon Philly. So
there were. You think we're going to see any of those? Nice.
Yeah,
nice
I
2K Ragavans.
I could see 1 or 2.
Yeah, especially if you're going to be on camera, you want to show it off.
Right, of course.
We see Nathan fetching up a basic island here, shuffling that deck.
Yeah, so this is pretty important. David here has answered the first 2 threats, and the Murktide deck really thrives off getting on the battlefield early, being able to untap, and then play counter spells and defend, and so on and so forth. But that's another threat.
There you go. Nathan bolting face, saying upstairs, main phase. Not something you see too often, but here it makes sense because it's followed up by a Murktide Regent coming in with 2 counters after exiling the Consider and the Bolt.
So got to grow that a little bit. Nice 5/5. With David at 14, it's already a 3-turn clock.
Yes, and we'll see David fetching once again. Another thing these fetch lands do is take care of, a good amount of life every game.
That's
between
true.
3
That's
and
right.
5 life.
And we've already seen some fetches and shocks, 17 to 13.
Just a basic planes here from David. We'll see if David has a threat or some sort another answer for the Murktide region perhaps here to follow up.
Yeah, Nathan's tapped out, so Solitude or some sort of answer right now, other binding, and the Izzet Murktide deck is a bit. Ooh, that's a really good one. Is a
Ooh.
bit threat light.
Yes, and Teferi coming in and bouncing Murktide back to Regent makes it a bit harder to cast next turn with an empty graveyard. Teferi on 1, and David gets a draw off of that too.
Yeah, probably best possible answer, honestly. It bounces your answers your thing, and of course, if the Teferi stays in play, all the counter spells are off. So Nathan has to bolt it, and that's a pretty bad exchange of resources there. 2-for-1 on David's side with extreme tempo.
Yes, and it looks like only 2 cards left in Nathan's hand as well. No follow-up play after bolting that Teferi. So pass back to David, who will play a Forest for turn. Taps 3 and
Risen Reef, do it.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. We have our first elemental.
Aw,
Oh.
boo.
Oh. Sorry, Nathan now has 2 cards in hand. I thought he had 2 cards before. So it looks like, oh, wait. Did he just drew for turn? Oh, another Risen Reef and a Dress Down. Take care of any of those enter the battlefield triggers. So nothing like that for David here. We'll see David play a Windswept Heath and fetch up another land. A lot of fetches in this
Yeah,
deck.
4 colors. You gotta get going here.
Right? And Breeding Pool, shocking that and down to 10. So taking a lot of damage off of those lands.
Yeah, I mean Nathan's already cast a few bolts here too, though. Needs to find an answer to the Risen Reef. The Dress Down's a temporary answer, but will go in turn, of course, and Risen Reef can get really, really out of hand very, very quickly.
Yes, and we see Ren and 6, a follow-up to the second Risen Reef from David. Looks like ticking up here and then passing the turns to Whipswept Heath will go back to hand and pass back to Nathan.
This game is going very, very well for David. If it wasn't super clear here, got a great mana base, pretty healthy life total. Now, resolved Planeswalker, resolved Engine, and most importantly, David just answered the first 3 threats from Nathan in very, very clean fashion. Ragavan never got a hit in. The channel only got 1 Surveil off, and the Murktide never got a hit in. And again, bouncing the Murktide is very, very devastating. So Nathan's got a lot of work to do here.
Yes, and Risen Reef also represents a lot of card advantage if it stays in play.
Absolutely, yeah. Once that ball starts rolling, things get crazy.
So we see another Murktide region here, a little more expensive this time, but still coming in with the 2 counters on it. So another 5/5. But again, Nathan is tapped out and passing the turn back. And here is Solitude from the side of David.
Yeah, definitely Nathan, recognizes this could be a thing that happen, but has to get on the board here. And, Solitude is a very likely play. 5-mana elemental, obviously. Now the Reef's in play also, exiles the Murktide, and Nathan's in huge trouble.
Right. And we see David hitting a land. It's a Windswept Heath off of that Risen Reef trigger, getting to put that into play and getting in for 1.
Don't forget, Reef can battle.
Right?
It's got power and toughness. It feels like an enchantment sometimes, but rumble with the best of them.
Up goes Ren and 6, turning the land to hand and passing the turn back. Steam Vents tapped from Nathan's side, a pass back of the turn, and it looks like David's playground here.
Yeah, if we had an advantage bar right now, it might be tilting up the side of the screen.
We see Solitude and Risen Reef both getting in the red zone this time. So that's going to gain a little life on the side of David, and Nathan will drop down to 15. David up to 13.
It's an Eldamari's Call. It's kind of a classic old card. This is a green-white instant that tutors for any creature. And there are a lot of good ones in David's deck.
Yes.
It's interesting too, because normally you think of the tribal deck, like humans or goblins or elves, where it's kind of like a linear, aggressive, kind of getting the board deck. Whereas elemental deck is almost more of a control deck, where you're just drawing a ton of cards, you're playing all these great pitch elementals. You have room for cards like Teferi and Ren and 6 and Leyline Binding. So a lot of raw power here in a sort of like pseudo creature control deck.
It looks like Omnath was the choice here.
That card's good too. Also an elemental. Yeah, the card quality in the elementals is super high. They're not like the elves or the goblins or whatever, where they're weak individually but good together. They're mostly just all good,
Right.
Just across many different colors is the issue.
And it looks like counting to make sure that he has all 4 requisite colors. While he fetched that Stomping Ground, down comes Omnath.
It's so lucky to have all the colors,
Yeah, trigger on Risen Reef. Gonna take a look. It's a land. It's a Triome. Comes in tapped anyway. So playing that and passing the turn back.
Yeah. One of the things that Izzet Murktide is it does a really good job getting ahead early, but once it falls behind like this, as we can see here, Nathan, the world champ, packing it up here in a pretty dominating game 1.
No one to hold him. No one to fold him.
Yeah.
going to look at game number 2 here. Now, w- what what should we expect to come out from the Murktide side? Are we going to see, things like the Bolt stay in because it takes care of some of the smaller, but it doesn't answer things like Solitude or Omnath. It can answer a Risen Reef or a Teferi,
Love
but
these
not
hand
much
cams, by
else.
the way. You
Oh
can see a
yes.
few blood moons there. It's tough because some removal needs to stay in
Mm.
because you need to actually kill Risen Reef. You can't let it sit and play. But the creatures all do something in David's deck. They ETB, they exile creatures, they deal 4 damage, they draw a card. So trying to beat those with removal isn't a very good plan. But there needs to be something to let it get out of hand too. So it's gonna be on Nathan here to get on the board really, really early. Leverage a counter spells. We saw Mystical Dispute thumb forward here. We see Subtlety as well. Just find a way to get ahead and to keep David from getting that huge ball rolling. Because once David's engine gets online, there's a Ren in play, there's a Teferi in play, there's an Omnath in play. It's just too much power for Murktide to overcome.
Yes, and we see, like you said, thumbing those mystical disputes. A nice, easy, cheap answer to some of the bigger threats from David. Those dress downs also there.
Yeah, that card's pretty nice as well.
Yes, we saw that do a little bit of work for Nathan in game 1, albeit it didn't work out. But kind of looking through, seeing what needs to be shaved here.
Yeah, I think that that game, David's draw really did line up perfectly. We had 2 1-mana removal spells with two 1-drops from Nathan. And then on the Murktide turn, having Teferi there is just huge. Not only do you bounce the Murktide, you draw a card. Nathan has always a Bolt killing it the next turn. So really had the perfect answer. If any of those cards had not been answered on the turn it was cast and allowed to untap, get that first Ragavan hit in, get that big Murktide untap, things could have changed a lot. So the pressure is definitely on David to have the answers here. David is definitely the control deck, and Nathan is definitely the aggro deck. And we'll see if Nathan can get off to a better start this game.
Yes, as we see, Nathan had to tap out to cast most of his threats in game 1, and we did see he did have a counter spell later on in the game, but was unable to cast that against any of the removal that David had. So if Nathan can perhaps better protect those threats here in game 2.
I think a lot of it is about with the Murktides. Nathan recognizes he is the beatdown deck here, and the late game power of the elemental deck is just too strong to compete with. So while Nathan would like to go a little later into the game, maybe play counter spell, at least some mana up, try and play Murktide with mana up for a counter spell. You just can't wait that long because the longer you wait, the worse things get, and the more David is favored. So choosing to jam those Murktides there, while it looks kind of from a hindsight perspective, well, he had the Teferi, but if David doesn't have the Teferi there, doesn't have the right answer at that exact time, Nathan untaps and probably wins. So I think making some reasonable choices here, understanding the matchup, understanding what needs to be done to win the game.
So the exclusion of Blood Moon from Edition, like you would think, I'm looking at a 4-color elemental deck, a 4-color deck. I want to bring in my Blood Moons. Well, why would that not happen on the side of
The
Nathan?
moons did not come in.
The moons did not come in.
Surprises me a little bit. I mean, obviously David knows the moon's a possibility, and there are fetchable basic lands. But that has surprised me a little bit. But we'll see. Nathan's very smart. He's our current world champion, 20 years old. It's crazy to think about, at Worlds itself, where a lot of these, legends of the game playing who are 35, 40 years old. And there's Nathan, who's not as old as the game is. Matt's been around for 30 years.
Oh,
Nathan's been
boy.
around for 20. And it's really, really cool seeing, kind of these young guns come up and take them to the world championship. And, one of the best players, if not the best player in the world right now.
Yes, and I will defer to him. So if he doesn't think the Blood Moons are coming in, I agree.
Right, exactly.
And we are shuffling up and getting ready for game number 2 here. David taking down game number 1 with his 4-color elemental deck. We're going to see a little bit of shuffling here. Good return to paper magic.
Yeah, it's nice. It's honestly, we can't audibly hear the shuffling on the video feed we currently have because there's no reason to have audio, but I can hear it in my head.
Right? It's cathartic, right?
Yeah,
It's
and
just
then
like, ha.
I will say I haven't played the Pro Tour a few weeks ago. Just during the draft portion, hearing all the silence and the cards flicking and the cards coming down, it feels really nice.
Now, we see on the side of David, it looks like 5 lands, a Teferi, and a Fury. Any thoughts on that hand?
I mean, this hand is not the answers like last game. I think there's an ending in there too, actually.
Oh.
So the ending is going to be a really important part because there needs to be that answer to the 1-mana threat from Nathan, but we're just going to see an island here.
Yeah.
No 1-drop.
We see a Bauble on the side of Nathan. And remember that Bauble trigger, and a Misty Rainforest, and a pass of the turn back. Consider at the end of David's turn for Nathan. Gonna take a good long look at that top card, thinking on it.
And these kind of games are night and day, honestly, for Izzet Murktide, where the non one drop games where the deck looks a little more like an actual control deck. We see your counterspell, mystical dispute iteration. It can sort of play that game, but again, it's match dependent. It's like, can they afford to play that game in this particular matchup?
Now, it looks like Nathan was taking on that Dragon's Rage Channeler on the top there and decided to keep it and draw. Thoughts when there is no third land here?
It is interesting because and Nathan's also choosing to leave a counterspell for a possible Ragavan or something like that too. So playing a little more of that slower game, trying to get the channeler in play with a counterspell backup.
That's what it looks like here as Misty Rainforest was played, not cracked yet. Nathan going to take a quick shuffle of David's deck and passing back the turn 2 for David. The draw is Lightning Bolt.
Yeah, I mean, David's hand wasn't amazing to start, only had like the one answer, but given how it's Nathan's draws lining up here, it is quite good. Enough lands to keep playing lands, a couple of removal spells, a Teferi Nathan never taps out. Pretty good spot.
Yes, and I do see that prismatic ending in David's hand as well. So multiple answers for multiple threats in David's hand right here. We'll see if Nathan decides to deploy a threat of his own, and it looks like Dress Down just to draw.
It's going to cycle here. Yeah, it looks like, Nathan needs to find land number 3. Needs to get a threat in play. This is very different than game 1 where Nathan was like threat, and again, this control game is a little harder to play when the deck like David's has so much late game power. So
it looks like Nathan's draw for the turn was another Dress Down. So is the 4-color elementals deck the control deck here?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not even close, I don't think. I think the longer the game goes, the more David is favored. Also, Nathan's, playing a tempo deck. All the counter spells are soft. Cards like Spell Pierce, Mystical Dispute. These cards do go dead as the game goes on. So, and then, Ragavan's great and all, but as a threat on turn 5 or 6, it's not as exciting as a card like Fury or Solitude or Risen Reef. So, a lot of pressure on Nathan here, and got a lot of work to do.
Yes, we'll see that expressive iteration cast here end of turn Dress Down, going to hit the bin. So Nathan does hit a land off of the expressive iteration, is able to play that, and puts, I believe, a second iteration in hand.
It is a good sequence, actually, because it looks like Nathan's digging for lands. So this might be a spot where David wants to jam a Teferi in hand, but Nathan has the Mystical Dispute, which is usually like a 1 over 2 of a sideboard. Those Spell Pierce would do it also, but, it looks like a Shields Down moment, but it's not. And then Nathan's also found his lands too, which is very important.
Yes. So Nathan with the land up. Let's see if David decides to deploy anything here, or if he's going to be patient. It looks like cracking that Flooded Strand. He's thinking about it.
This could be a big turn. David goes for Teferi here, and then Nathan disputes it. Now Nathan gets to untap completely, deploy a threat, and has multiple counter spells in hand. This could swing the tide of the game.
Yes, we'll see if David is going to play it patient or is going to jam here. We see David grabbing a Plains, and I have a feeling we're about to see something hit the battlefield.
Yeah, fetching untap basic usually means I'm jamming. So let's see what's happening.
And it looks like it will be Teferi. And Nathan could not tap that Spiral of Canal quick enough. Mystical Dispute. So Teferi to the bin, pass the turn back to Nathan. And we'll see what Nathan wants to do here with David's shields down. And it looks like expressive iteration, hitting a Ragavan, a Consider, and a fetch land.
So we see Nathan here really slipping into his control role. He could have played a threat here and let the counterspell up, but decided to just play iteration, keep making land drops, keep drawing cards, kind of play the control game. So Nathan thinks that he can kind of just counterspells up the curve, keep drawing cards, and play that more normal control game.
Right. And Ragavan goes back to the library, a land into play, and another expressive iteration in hand.
Yeah, that's working very well.
Yes, and we'll see a fetch. So David is at 17. This will bring Nathan down to 16.
Cool play here. So David waits to the fetch, fires up an Endurance, which will be eating the graveyard of Nathan. So any future Murktides, any Deliriums, gone for the moment.
But Nathan, in response, Unholy Heats the Endurance. That's what it looked like.
Yeah, that'll work.
Yeah, that'll do it.
All right, what's going on? What's going on here?
Looks like everything's
shuffling. He had to fetch. So
yes.
there was a fetch, kind of shortcutted in the middle there, just making sure the order of everything is right.
Yeah, got to make sure, do it all properly, that everything that's supposed to get shuffled back gets shuffled back. And looks like our players are both on the same page here.
Still a great exchange for Nathan, though. Obviously, losing the graveyard kind of sucks, but like, the race to a Murktide or a Delirium's Channeler here, not that important, honestly, because Nathan's kind of in his control role. He's already plus 2 or 3 cards with the iterations, and looking pretty good.
Yes, certainly. And Nathan, finally comfortable going to deploy a threat in Dragon's Rage Channeler with an empty graveyard for now.
Yeah, and I think that Nathan has a Ragavan in hand too, and decided to hold that one. Maybe trying to play on Fury or something like that. So content to just kind of play this game very slowly.
Yes, David does in fact have a Fury in hand.
All right.
We'll see Prismatic ending here, and a response will consider. So Dragon's Rage Channeler will surveil a land to the graveyard. Going to take a look at that next card for the consider, scrying and thinking about it, considering taking a good long look at his hand, see if Nathan wants to keep that card on top and draw it, or
Yeah, there's a high desire to just put almost any card in the graveyard here, just kind of refill, get Murktide ready, get the Delirium ready, but gonna draw it. And I think from David's side, that means that card's really, really good.
yes. And we see it is a Murktide Regent. So
There we
yeah,
go.
I would say that is pretty good as Nathan untaps for turn and draws a second Murktide Regent.
Yeah, I mean, full grip for Nathan here. Enough mana, enough threats, a couple counter spells, looking pretty good. The only real limiting resource is the graveyard being only 2 cards.
Yeah, I see double counterspell, double Murktide Regent, a Ragavan dress down. So definitely ways to protect those creatures.
Sliding to a bit of a draw go game here. Nathan says go. David says go back.
We'll see Ragavan coming out dashed to be bolted. So what are your thoughts on dashing Ragavan there rather than just playing it?
I mean, it means that Nathan's not concerned about the mana. Spending 1 extra mana here is not so big of a deal. Has the counter spell up. It's fairly likely to die, given that David has a bunch of cards in hand. They've been playing draw go for a while. But I think Nathan's just saying, hey, I want one of your cards. I want a card in the graveyard. Here it is. If you don't got an answer, cool, but you probably do. That's totally fine too.
Yes. We'll see. David lining up those lands, taking a good look, playing another land, and just passing again.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to see how many cards David's got in the grip, but it's a decent sized hand. Definitely interesting to see. As we said earlier, the longer the game goes, the soft counters go dead. So,
And Nathan saying, I'm dashing out my other Ragavan.
all right, here comes the first big play from Nathan.
Yes. We see a counter that's countered down. Will David have a second answer for Ragavan? It looks like the answer right now is no. So Temple Garden revealed from the top of David's deck, and Nathan gonna get a treasure token.
Yeah, important to note though that the dashing there, does eat the mana up for the turn. So Nathan now has 2 mana left over for a land and a treasure for a counter spell. But every time you dash Ragavan, you spend a lot of mana on your own turn. And then David still has a decent amount of cards in hand, but just gonna say go again. Wow.
Yeah, nothing, not even a crack of the fetch land. And Mishra's Bauble going to crack and look at the top of David's deck, going to dash out Ragavan once again. And here's Endurance.
Endurance surprisingly powerful here. You think of it as a graveyard hate card for like decks like Dredge or whatever, kind of graveyard decks. But Endurance does a lot here. It keeps the graveyard from Murktide in check, blocks Ragavan and Channeler, and then it's just cheap and has flash against counter spells too. So it gets eaten here, but once again gets the value of eating the graveyard.
Yes, much like earlier, Unholy Heat will take care of the Endurance before blocks. We'll see if this Ragavan is able to finish coming across. Both players at 16 life at the moment before damage.
Yeah, I think the concern here is that, while this game has been looking very good for Nathan, David's still at 16, and we're entering kind of the mid to late game here. Nathan's already cast a few counter spells, and a lot of David's cards, Omnath, Ren and 6, these are really powerful cards where if they do resolve, the cascading advantage can really overcome this early board state. And David has time to utilize these cards as well. So while things are looking good for Nathan here, things could turn pretty quickly.
It's absolutely. Now, those Endurances hurt more because we know that Nathan actually has 2 Murktide Regents in hand.
Correct.
So that's going to slow down Nathan's clock even more so. Murktide Regent usually being, the haymaker finisher in this Izzet Murktide deck, as aptly named. So another Ragavan before attacks.
Ooh, it's a dress down. It's one of the sketch art cards.
Yes.
Yeah, I haven't done coverage in a little bit, but I can feel for all commentators out there in the world for all these alternate arts and stuff. tough world out there, but it's a dress down, I believe. Also, given the context of the play, playing it before combat with Ragavan.
Right.
So,
And it looked like it was tapped properly for a dress down. So,
yeah.
But
I'm calling it dress down. If it's not dress down, I don't care. It is dress down now.
We'll see David with the second Teferi of the game, with a blank board besides.
Yeah, and this is what I was saying, where like a lot of must counter cards from David here. Teferi comes down, and then Nathan has to counter that. And then how many good cards are there left in David's hand? I mean, there's land number 8, but again, there are a lot of haymakers. So
and we'll see another Ragavan from the side of
Ooh.
Nathan, and that one's gonna get in.
It's gonna hit a Renin 6. It's the card that Nathan's probably interested in casting.
Yes, and Nathan with 2 treasures already, so able to cast it here and now with 4 other mana open. Oh, sorry, 3. I guess that was the third Ragavan hit.
Yep, well, it's going down now to cast.
Now it's going down.
Cast this Ren.
We see Renin 6 coming into play. What will Ren do here?
I just might get a land.
Just get a land.
If Nathan wanted to get super aggressive and start pinging and kind of use Ren as like a delayed lightning bolt to try and close the game out, I don't think it's insane because he does already have a lot of lands in play. But just gonna go with the value, get the fetch land back.
I mean, my thought is also not wanting to shrink the graveyard continuously either.
That is true.
So, we'll see. David at 9. Now, I feel like David hasn't, with the exception of the 2 endurances, which were played for different reasons, like we haven't really seen much aggression or threats or anything from David, like any sort of. But here we go for the first of the game, the Omnath.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, there comes a point where David has to start casting things, and this seems to be it. So
yes. And prismatic ending on the Renin 6.
So the Omnath obviously gets dressed down to will not draw a card and won't have the ability to do the landfall triggers, but it's still in play. It is a 4/4 with a lot of shine there and a lot of threat for next turn too.
Yes, we'll see Consider on the side of Nathan. Again, taking a good long look at the top card of that library, thinking about what to do next, what threats. Oh, and we see Ragavan hitting the bin. Consider also to the bin.
With those Murktides in, you want to bin almost anything. You just got to fill that graveyard up. And now we see, though, as I was saying, Nathan has not closed this game out yet, and we see an Omnath in play, and David can start playing some really powerful cards and maybe crawling back into the game.
Yeah, Omnath does a lot of stuff, too. So Omnath gaining life, Omnath adding mana, Omnath does a lot. It's quite the toolbox.
Yeah, one interesting thing here is that there's no companion for David. Usually we see the elemental decks are playing Kihira, the Orphan Guard. And that's a great thing to have to sink your mana into when you're kind of flooded like this, have a bunch of lands in play. But looks like Unholy Heat's taking down Omnath, and here comes Ragavan again.
And hits a Solitude off the top of David's deck. So up to 3 treasures, has 6 mana, would be able to cast a Solitude.
Yeah, if Nathan wants another threat here, it's not crazy, but looks like it might be Murktide time.
Counting up mana here, tapping 3, taking a look at the graveyard, deciding what to exile here, and it looks like we're going to see some instants and sorceries get exiled.
Good choice,
Surprise.
Nathan. Good choice. World champ for a reason. We see here Nathan tapped a 3rd mana. I think this should signify to David that there's probably a second Murktide coming, because why else would you be so careful with your graveyard? Obviously, Delirium's a thing too, but the big Murktide comes down. Now the window for David is starting to close pretty quickly.
Yes, and also leaving Counterspell in the graveyard as well, like not making the Murktide as big as possible. But David sees the end of times, so we will head to a game number 3 here. Both players taking down 1.
Yeah, kind of an odd game. I think David flooded a little bit there. It felt like David was just a little bit threat light, and while the pace of the game seemed to favor David, Nathan's draw lined up well. The iterations are definitely the one card you want to have when you're playing a Strago game, allowing you to get the draw 2s over and over again. And then David just couldn't really get through. There was definitely a few turns where if David had just gone threat like 4 turns in a row, Nathan would not have had all the answers, but David just couldn't really find them.
Yes, and we did see that big turn of Teferi getting countered. So
yeah, Teferi's a big one, but now we see David going to be on the play here on game 3. Also, we'll see. I mean, that game, was a pretty atypical Murktide game from Nathan, like I was saying, where we saw no 1-drop on 1. We saw the declining, playing the 1-drop on 2, and kind of just playing the slower control game. We'll see how that plays out for Nathan game 3 on the draw. Nathan wants to kind of keep that stance or wants to, try to be a little more aggressive. And
It looks like Nathan opting for a Ledger Shredder over a Dragon's Rage channeler here.
hmm. Yeah, I guess Shredder's a little better in a longer game. And also we did see a bunch of endurances too. So Dragon Rage Channeler does run afoul of endurance a little bit.
Yes, we see one or two still remain in the main deck, but just deciding the one Ledger Shredder coming in.
Yeah, I think that's just just a hey, this was a little better than that threat. It's not a I don't need to take out Dragon Rage Channeler. I don't need to put a Ledger Shredder, but it's a slight upgrade. So
deciding to still the Blood Moons remain in that sideboard.
Yeah, I'm still a little surprised by that. But again, Nathan's real good. So we'll happily defer here in the booth.
Yes. We'll see. Getting ready to shuffle up for game number 3 here. Nathan Steuer on Izzet Murktide and David Tardif on 4-color elementals.
As an aside, these hand cams are freaking great.
Oh yeah,
just here for the hand cams, and we get a round of applause in chat because looks real good. Excellent from our side as well to be able to see what's going on. Just good stuff.
Yes.
Now it's possible that the lack of hero means we might have a new card in David's deck, in Elishnorn, Mommy of Machines. Very, very good in the deck. Very, very powerful card. And doubles all of the ETB abilities.
Mother.
So we see, double Solitude, double Fury, double Risen Reef. Things can get a little wild. So definitely a possible reason. This is a closed deck list event. So we don't have the deck list of the players. So I need to make some educated guesses at times.
Mother certainly, can get the party going.
Mommy. Mother, may I? And the answer is no. If your opponent has one in play, you will not get your ETB abilities. It's important to note, I believe Murktide is not an ETB ability, though. It is a setting ability.
Right.
Because it needs to come in as the size that it is, so you can't bolt it. So I don't think that the...
yes, I believe it comes into play with that many.
Correct. So Mommy will not affect any of the cards in Nathan's deck as far as ETBs go. But of course, I believe it is 7 toughness, which happens to be just the right amount to get out of unholy heat range. And then, of course, a powerful card in general.
Yes, an interesting one that I'm looking forward to seeing in play at some point, hopefully.
Yeah, it's gotten a lot of hype so far. Hasn't really found too many significant homes. It is a 5-drop, obviously, but it's fairly easy to cast, and the effect is very powerful. And it's kind of like Shieldred, where it sits there, and you kind of don't really realize how much of effect it has in the game until you see it in play, because just so many things have ETB abilities, So it does turn off a lot of stuff.
All right, looks like we're ready for game number 3 here as players are dealing out their hands. Let's take a little look here. We see 2 lands, Wrenn and 6, Solitude, Teferi, and it looks like David keeping this 2-lander, snapping it off, playing a tap land, saying go.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it's predicated, I think, would be on the player draw. Being able to resolve Wrenn on the play, where only Spell Pierce can answer it, is huge. So this is a game where if Nathan's on the play and can counterspell the Wrenn, this game is entirely different. So we see here kind of like your classic Magic, play draw versus counterspells thing where you can play your 2-drop on the play against a counterspell deck and have it resolve.
Right. We do know that Nathan does have things like Mystical Dispute and Spell Pierce is always a possibility. But we'll see if David is comfortable slamming this Wrenn 6 here.
And I see a Flush Storming in Nathan's hand also, but Spell Pierce is the only one that can cleanly answer it. And I don't think that it's currently available for Nathan.
Yes. I do not see one, but...
And looks like we got, is that what's the red card? Is it an only heat? Not sure. But we see, to consider, it's very, very, very setup heavy hand for Nathan. A lot of cantrips, a lot of card draw, not a lot of actual action.
Yes. Oh, and consider. So Nathan going to take a look at the top here. Bolt going to take that, untap, and draw for turn. We see Ledger Shredder. So a second Spire Bluff Canal pushed to the front. So
Nathan could heat and bolt this Wrenn. That would kill it at a major disadvantage, a 3-1 disadvantage on cards, and also tap Nathan out for the turn, leaving David open for a Teferi. So could be KO, but it's risky.
It looks like just a Ledger Shredder and pass the turn back to David. So we've got a 1-3 out on the battlefield.
So now I see very, very different from game 2, where once David resolves a threat, Nathan can't sit back anymore. So now if David has a Teferi here, this is a phenomenal start for David, So kind of that wall of counterspell starts to fall apart once David resolves something, then Nathan's tap out, and then the raw power of David's deck can come through.
All right, and let's see what David fetches up here. That'll be a big tell into what David plans on doing next. It looks like a forest. So just basic forest on the side of David. And with Nathan's shields down.
Do we have a Teferi? Yep.
We
All
saw-
right. The dreaded
Yes.
Ren Teferi curve.
We
Gruul into Azorius.
We saw Nathan just nod his head there, be like, "Yep, it's pretty good."
Yep. So Nathan can bolt this Teferi because Teferi cannot be on the battlefield for Nathan's deck to function at sorcery speed, of course. So, but here's Shredder.
All right, Shredder gonna take one from the fiery islet, and I imagine this is the bolt.
Yeah. You got to kill Teferi here. Just can't afford to be on the battlefield. But again, once again, Nathan is tapped out. Has a 2/4 in play. Has a threat, but a 2/4 Shredder has nothing on some of the raw, powerful cards in David's deck.
I'm imagining it's going to be a 2/4 after this connive here, and it will be considered hitting the bin. So 2/4 Ledger Shredder.
Really interesting match so far because every game has had a different texture. Game 1 was the Nathan playing 1-drops, David answering the game. Game 2 is Nathan playing control deck against David. And then game 3 here is sort of like Nathan kind of trying to be a little more controlling, but now needing to play on the draw against resolve threats.
Yes, Nathan has felt like he has been just behind on each turn just from being on the draw.
Absolutely.
Prismatic ending to take care of that Ledger Shredder, and Ren and 6 getting up there. Six loyalty now.
Yeah, I mean, there are some bolts in David's deck, so the ultimate could theoretically be relevant, but probably not. More so howling on.
Yes, keeping David's hand full, making sure he makes every single land drop very important in these elementals decks. We'll see if he decides to do anything else here, or like Nathan is going to Expressive Iteration.
It's a powerful card, but draw 2 in the face of planeswalkers and so on and so forth. Wow. Go see a Flusterstorm. Yeah, gonna defend against the iteration. Which, I mean, it's interesting. Usually, Flusterstorm would be used to win a counter war, trying to resolve that Teferi or resolve that Ren. But Ren's already in play. So David's saying, you know what? I'm ahead. You're not drawing cards this turn.
Does David smell blood in the water? Is that what it is?
I think, yeah. He's just saying, you know what? I'm in an advantageous position. So let's have you not draw cards. And maybe if you're looking for a land here, you can't play a land, which is great too. So looking pretty good for David.
Yes, Nathan deciding if there's anything else he can do here. He has not yet played a land for turn. Otawara is the top card in the hand there.
Yeah, not a lot going on. We got a Unholy Heat, Consider, Murktide, a couple lands.
Yeah, Spire, Buff Canal, and Otawara. And it looks like Otawara will come down as a land, going to cast that Murktide Regent.
So now we're back in the same scenario of game 1 where Nathan's like, all right, I'm behind. I just got a jam. Here's Murktide. And David could have a whole bunch of things here to answer that.
Nice.
Leyline Binding, Solitude, Teferi.
Yes, so we see a Flooded Strand crack. And David going to take a little look through the deck.
Can't feel good for Nathan. That was a very fast land crack. So see what comes up here, but it's probably not going to be good for Nathan.
Hard cast Solitude would be something.
Yeah.
We'll see. Risen Reef, and there it is. The Solitude.
Yep. So missing out on a little bit of Risen Reef value, I suppose, but I think David will live.
I think there's pretty good value all on its own. The Solitude taking care of that Murktide Regent. We have, again, David at a fairly healthy life total of 15, Nathan at 17.
Yeah.
David has full control of the battlefield here. Nathan going to try to consider. Counterspell going to hit the bin and going to draw. It looks like another Murktide Regent.
Yeah, I mean, bidding Counterspell there, one of the better cards in the matchup, is a clear sign that Nathan is desperate. We see the Ren here has already drawn 4 extra cards. Now, Solitude in play is also, it's a 3/2 lifelinker. Like, that's a thing that needs to be dealt with in one way or another. Ren's still there. And whenever you got to, target a planeswalker with a rule spell to stop the ultimate, you usually are in pretty big trouble.
Yeah, and that wasn't even a full powered Unholy Heat. That was 2.
Just a little tickle.
Just tickle Ren and 6.
Yep.
And Risen Reef coming down. Now the value engine is also on the battlefield.
Yeah, Nathan's tapped out and can only look on in disarray here because David's humming on all cylinders.
Gonna sacrifice that Misty Rainforest. I'm gonna take another little look through the library, grab a nice Stomping Ground, coming in untapped.
Pay 2, whatever.
Right, whatever.
I'm having a good day.
Today is a good day for David. Gonna gain it back and then some with a Solitude attack here. So Nathan will drop down to 14, David up to 15.
Yes, interesting. We see the shock in it just say go. It could be a endurance, I suppose, but
Mm,
firmly in the driver's seat here. And now there are just too many things for anything to contend with. There's a
there.
Planeswalker, almost going to ultimate, a lifelinking attacker, a card draw engine in play, a bunch of mana. Just there isn't really a card in Murktide that kind of gets out of a spot like this, as far as dealing with multiple things.
Yeah, here's that Murktide Regent coming down. So Dragon's Rage Channeler and Murktide Regent going to try to muck up the battlefield a little bit on Nathan's side, so David doesn't push through as easily.
Yeah, definitely interesting on that. The Stomping Ground untapped. It looked like it might have been for an endurance, but never cast. Obviously, Nathan just cast the Murktide immediately, and the cards are dealt as part of the cost, so you can't endurance in response to that. But
Yes.
yeah, you can see the body language here. Nathan is not too thrilled how his game is going.
Right. Red and 6 going to ping the Dragon Rage Channeler and play a Windswept Heath. They're going to pass the turn back. Now,
Interesting. So you would think if David had an answer for the Murktide, it would have been cast. So,
and, oh my.
oh boy, yeah.
So Ren and 6 going to hit the bin after that Murktide attack, taking it out, and another Dragon's Rage Channeler. And I imagine, it's hard to have an answer for both Dragon's Rage Channeler and the Murktide Regent too.
Yeah, I mean, the channeler is just the baby channeler. I mean, David's drawn a lot of extra cards this game, but they all were lands off the Rens. So it's possible David's hand right now is just 5 lands. Because any elemental would probably hit the battlefield with the Risen Reef in play. Any removal spell would have hit the Rens. I mean, the Murktide. So definitely interested to see how this goes. Oh, that's a pretty shiny one.
Yes. Omnath in all of its glory. Omnath, Locus of Creation, has joined the party. And in response, an Unholy Heat on the little 1/1 Risen Reef.
All right. Sorry, little buddy.
So not going to get a trigger there. Going to Surveil. It looked like a Ragavan to the bin. But Omnath itself will trigger. So David going to draw off of that. And it looks like a land and a Solitude in hand now.
Yeah. Looks like a lot of lands, but that Solitude is pretty clutch. Oh, double Veil of Summer. That's the part of the equation that looks interesting here. So just haven't had a chance to cast Veil yet. There hasn't been a turn because Nathan's been tapping out so much that David's been able to resolve his spells. So definitely an interesting hand. Definitely a hand that you can probably sniff out if you're Nathan. Like what cards could be stuck in David's hand at this point besides lands, and Veil is a card that makes sense given the texture of the game.
Right, and we see David separating his mana here. Going to tap one, play Solitude.
I'm using the 4 mana floating from the landfall ability of Omnath.
Mm-hmm.
And despite being a little flooded here, David's still in a very good position.
We see
another
tap and Prismatic Ending on the Dragon's Rage Channeler.
And here it comes.
Spell Pierce.
Is it Veil time? It is. Just take your 2 for 1 and be happy about it.
Draw the card, David. Oh, knocks over some card. Got a little overzealous there. And
make sure you attack with the one that actually has non-summoning sickness. It's very important. You gotta play an honest game here.
Yes. Looks like things have flipped once again. Nathan revealing the counterspell from hand and saying
Nathan's
that's enough.
trying to counterspell the game. He says, you know what? I'm going to counterspell this game. We're going to play game 4. So a pretty dominating win there from David.
Yes. That was definitely an impressive showing from 4-color elementals and our 4-color elementals player.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like a pretty good matchup for elementals. There really are just so many must answer cards, where in a less fair matchup, if David's playing against, a more combo oriented deck or something like that, the higher cost cards, the answer cards aren't gonna be as good. But in a spot like this, just so many answers for the 1-drop threats, so many answers for Murktide, so much card advantage, and so many must answer cards. You just, Nathan has the counter spells, but they have to line up. Because if a Rem resolves, if a Teferi resolves, things can spiral out of control very, very fast, which is exactly what we saw there.
Yes, but well played from both of our players.